And there we go. So what I'm going to speak to you today about is my journey and how I implement Smile Design, 2D and 3D, and how we work with that within our clinical scenario, and how we actually implement and try and pull that information through the entire process of rehabilitating and helping our patients in correcting the treatment and everything that they need done. At any stage, anybody wants to message me, or if they want to get hold of me before or after this presentation, you can get hold of me on any of the social links that you see there. So Dr. Jean van Lierop, you can link me on Facebook or Instagram, and I'll try and answer any questions that you might have. I don't think it all stops here. This is only the beginning of our journey. And as you and I go together, this whole process of learning how to integrate, we can do it together. So if you have any questions, please pop me a message. I'm always good at answering those kind of things. To do that, we have to first understand where we start. We have to look at digital, and I always look at it and I try and compare it with a watch. If we look at that beautiful watch you have in front of you, that is a completely digital watch. It's amazing what's inside it. I've got a funky Garmin. I'm not an iPhone watch person. I'm a Garmin person. And if I look at that, there's so much technology that's wrapped into that little small device. There's so many things and so many possibilities and so much that we can do. It's absolutely incredible. And it's come a long way. I remember my first digital watch was probably in 2005, 2006. And in that whole journey, so much has changed. We have infinite possibilities that we can do. And we often compare, I want to compare the digital watch with actually what happens in the mouth. If we look at the mouth itself, although we live in this digital realm where we're trying to implement so many digital change, bring the digital into everything that we do in practice, what we need to understand and what we need to remember is that the mouth is analog. In other words, the mouth consists of a huge amount of moving parts. Kind of like an old traditional watch that you had from even the 40s or the 50s. All those little cogs and those little reels, they all interlink and they work together. And if any single part of those are out of touch or out of sync, then we can't just download an update. We can't just download a change or do something that's digitally realm. We have to actually make an analog change. We have to work and physically take the watch apart to change what's inside and fix what's broken. And we have that with everything that's in the mouth. So yes, we try and incorporate digital. Digital is a tool to help us solve the analog problem. And when we do that, we have to understand that all the dentistry that we do in today's world is driven by facial dentistry, facially driven dentistry. So what we're trying to do is incorporate that which is the entire holistic patient and bring that into the treatment that we do for our patients. So we bring everything in using that design. So that if we look at treating our patients, even if we are working within digital realm, we have to remember the mouth is analog. And in the end of the day, everything is going to be driven by function and biology and then aesthetics. So if we have that mindset and we understand that everything we implement and build will have to function correctly within the mouth, and we have to be biologically accurate, and we have to respect the biology we work in, then we can create incredibly beautiful results. And that's why I love dentistry. I love the concept that we can create this amazing restorative treatment, yet it can function in a person and it can be healthy and biologically acceptable. So how did we start doing this? How did we start? How did my journey start? And this was, gosh, many years ago. We used to work in kind of an analog manner. So we just thought about everything we do analog. So we used to take the clinical skills that we got taught at varsity, and we implemented those clinical skills And we literally just played as we went along, whether it would be chairside mock-ups or chairside work or chairside design or chairside skill set. Everything was driven by your own hands and what you're capable to create with the skills that you have in your own hands. So we worked in an analog, completely analog realm. And how we did that, a lot of different layers and things, and this is all resin-based. So everything I'm talking about today is mostly resin-based. And we created these beautiful restorations through resin to incorporate that. Then we moved from a digital analog to analog realm, and we created or implemented some 2D design. So we started taking photographs. We used the photographs, and we took that photographs and we analyzed it on some kind of either Keynote or PowerPoint or whatever it might be. We designed our things and kind of tried to pick up what small changes we need to make. So we started planning and preparing for everything that we would do, and we did it on our computers. And we did that trying to understand how we're going to end up in the end. And that 2D design was still pulled through into our analog realm. So we still jumped between analog and a 2D design into an analog realm. How we did that, as you can see in this photograph, we evaluated the problem that we have. We used some simple tools, and with those simple tools, we were able to identify the key elements that I need to change. And those key elements was, in this case, we had to kind of make the central a little bit narrower to create the space for the lateral to come forward. And if we create that space, then we can build it slowly and create nice symmetry and restorations. By understanding what we need to change, we then planned a little bit better, and we had slightly more predictable results in how we got to the end. As the journey continued, we started incorporating the laboratory in what we were doing. So we would take the analog realm, we would design it two-dimensionally within our computer programs. We'd send that information to the laboratory, and the laboratory would create a wax up buildup of or interpretation of that 2D design. So if we were accurate enough, we could really get a beautiful connection between what my 2D design is and what my laboratory was able to create within wax and the limitations that the wax had. So we kind of started drawing the lines and started pulling in all the extra people that we need to make a success in bigger, more complex cases. In the end, we still had to create an analog restoration. So we still had to create from that wax, transfer it some way into an analog realm. One of those ways, obviously, through direct restoratives, and this is a simple case or multiple restorations that we did treating an elderly person with advanced wear. And we tried to restore some of the function that he's got using the two-dimensional design, using the laboratory to create the wax up, create the stent, guide the restorative process so that we can take him from that scenario into a much better or much healthier situation. From this position, we can protect what he has remaining. We can restore, rebuild what is lost, and we can create the aesthetic and the function that he deserves. Again, all of that taking from an analog through a two-dimensional design into an analog realm again. But is there a better way? Is there a way that we can nowadays do things more predictably? Is there a way that we can connect our platform where we plan, take that planning and convert that into a more complex way of deciding how our treatment's going to go, use that to then print and guide our treatment and take that into a further realm? Is there a way that we can achieve that within a predictable way? Because what we want is predictability in all of the restorations that we have. So how do we do that? What I want to do is, over the next 45 minutes or so, is I want to show you how I'm starting to implement all these two-dimensional, three-dimensional design aspects within my daily practice. And we're going to do that through a few cases. And as we do these cases, hopefully I'll be able to show you how each phase impacts on how I design and plan my treatment. Let's start with a relatively simple case. I literally finished this case 2 weeks ago. And it's a young lady, about 16 years old, with dysthema. And she is concerned about the aesthetics that has. So what is it that through our restorative dentistry, what is it that we can do to improve on that aesthetic result? And can we do it in such a way that we don't impact on her long-term health, that we don't have a problem long-term with the health of the teeth, or that we possibly interfere with any future treatment that she might need? And why I say that is if we look at the case, we need to actually diagnose it, and we need to look a little bit closer. And this is something you can only start picking up when you start analyzing the things that you're doing. You start analyzing the photography, and you start analyzing what you're doing and the clinical scenario that you're in front of you. And we can see what happened here is that if you use the interpupillary line and you look at the actual horizontal of the face, she has a definitive cant that is currently present. So now you're sitting with a dilemma. You have a 16-year-old patient that has a cant with dysthema. Is it something that I should be treating? Or is it something that I should be referring to an orthodontist? Or is there a way that I can combine my orthodontic treatment and my restorative treatment already in an early stage? And these are discussions we're able to have with a patient, because now we have photography and designs to actually look at. And how did we do that? If you take this patient's case and you look at it and you start analyzing, the patient's young. Are we going to accept the facial symmetry of the maxilla? Are we going to allow for odontic treatment at a later stage for long term? And can the orthodontic treatment eventually correct the size discrepancy? It won't. In other words, if we evaluate the size discrepancy that this patient has in how the width to length ratio, then we can see that actually, by adding some tooth structure, we can solve a lot of the aesthetic concern, and we can solve the size discrepancy between the teeth. And if we do it correctly, and we follow a planned approach, keeping in mind that we need to allow the patient to have the option of later having orthodontic treatment, then there are a few key things that we're going to have to look at. The first is, when we close the diastema, we're going to move into a certain direction to try and fill the gaps up as we move across. Second thing is, we are not going to do anything to the soft tissue. She's way too young and she might have orthodontics. So we're going to leave the soft tissue exactly what it is. Thirdly, when we look at the lateral sizing, our goal is to mirror the two laterals to try and keep the size of them identical, so that if in the future she wants to move the teeth orthodontically, the orthodontist has the ability to do that, and he's not guided by what I've done. In other words, I'm going to idealize the guidance to protect my buildups, but I'm going to make sure that when I lengthen my laterals and create that volume to close the diastemas, I'm going to do it in such a way that I don't influence the treatment that could be happening forward. Now, that's a lot of information, a lot of things that I'm thinking about. And definitely my patient doesn't think about that at all. What does that mean? It means that I have to go sit and I have to talk to my patient and I have to explain to them what it is that I'm going to be doing. I have to look at the two-dimensional design. And when I look at that two-dimensional design, I have to then go and show that to the patient. And that's what I can do with modern tools, something like we have in SmileFy. So now that you can take that design When you do that design, I can then show the patient exactly what design I'm making. And then I can ask the patient, look, these are the things I'm considering. Are you happy with the plans that we're making? And are we going to be able to implement it? Just give me a minute. Sorry, somebody just decided to print a document right next to me. It's what Bluetooth is, eh? Wi-Fi. Everything just happens together. So just to recap, we're making massive changes in a young patient's life. We're changing a lot of different things, and we want to do it in such a way that we do not impact on future treatment, but we rather assist in future treatment. And that discussion can only happen if we can openly show the patient what our designs are and how we're going to work in those designs. You can see within the app that allows you, I can show the designs, why I'm moving things around, and have a preview of what we're going to be doing for the patient. Once I've done that, I can then go ahead and start implementing the possible changes that I want to make. Which brings me to the first question I want to ask you. Diego, if you're there, I think it's time that we kind of interact a little bit here. And I'm going to ask everybody within your chat box, I think Diego's going to put a question up for us here, or poll. And I'm going to ask all of you, if you could have a look and just to help kind of get an idea as to where we are. How many of you currently perform two-dimensional smile designs of whichever format, whether it would be analog, whether it be in a computer program, whether it be working on Keynote or PowerPoint, or whether it would be on an app like SmileFy? How many of you actually try and do that correctly all the time? We've got a few questions still popping up. I can see all of them coming. I'm glad to see that quite a lot of you, about 40%, already implement 2D design, which is amazing. Also, quite a few are still trying to learn how to implement it. Okay, which is great. So what we're going to try and do is throughout this process is try and answer some of those questions as to how we can implement it and what we can do to use 2D Smile design within your program. Okay. Are we happy with that? Diego, can I stop the poll? Let's give it a few more seconds. A few of you that are still answering.
All right. So yeah, so here we have 39% of our doctors here, they do use Smile simulations in their first consultations. 43% they're trying to learn more about it, and we are very happy that you are here learning with Dr. John. And 19% still do not perform it.
Okay, awesome. Thank you very much for that. Thanks, guys. That's great. And it's great to know. Look, within South Africa, I think we've got a very big dental group that already uses two-dimensional simulation to try and help and guide our patients, which is great. That's why we're here. We're trying to learn. We're trying to see how we can do it even better. Okay. So from our 2D design, where we can now sit with the patient and show the patient exactly what we want to achieve, and we get their buy-in, we then take that information and we share that with the laboratory, and the laboratory is able to convert that two-dimensionally into a three-dimensional analog realm. In other words, we move from 2D into a 3D design, and that 3D design then comes to us as a three-dimensional printed model. So we work within a digital realm until we connect into the analog realm again. We're moving into a guided treatment, and we're going to use this design that we've got, and we're going to use that design to create the final restorations that we're trying to do in a resin base. Okay. And that is exactly how we're doing it. We perform the procedure using the guidelines that we have all those stents and everything that was printed model. We guide it from a palatal shell, and through the whole process, we create a lovely restoration, creating everything that we want, and accepting and understanding, connecting the plan that we had in the beginning, what we wanted to achieve in the beginning, and we're connecting that with what we actually achieved at the end. So we accepted some of the soft tissue scenarios that we have. We didn't do any changes to the soft tissue. We made sure that the lateral was not going to be interference, and we're going to protect that lateral resin buildup so that it can stay strong and it will last longer. And through a functional realm, because we understand that everything we do within dentistry in the mouth still has to function properly, we have to create the guidance and the function to be able to keep and protect those restorations as much as possible. Okay. And that get a beautiful result. We get a patient that is confident and happy, and a patient that is happy to have completed the treatment, yet is still open to future treatment later on, if something happens, or if she has the need to have future orthodontic treatment to correct the cant. It can be done because our actions have not interfered with that in the long term. And more importantly, she's happy. And I love this, getting a message from our patients to say how happy they are with the work that they've done. And she's happy being back at home, back in school, and getting the compliments and the comments that she wants. So that is the realm where we kind of moved. We kind of took the complete workflow and we went into a diagnostic phase. We tried to understand what it is that we want to achieve. We designed it two-dimensionally, discussed with the patient, let the patient understand where we want to go with the treatment, and then create a three-dimensional view of that. And in that 3D, print the models, and from the models, we're able to create the restorations that we wanted. So within the workflow, we were able to connect with everything there. Where did my laboratory come in? The laboratory had a massive impact within the three-dimensional design and the printing of the models so that I can create my work in the end. So I drove the two-dimensional design, shared that with my laboratory. They converted the two-dimensional into a 3D design, and then worked into the analog realm and created beautiful restorations. Okay. But what about slightly more complex cases? What if there's something more that we need to achieve? What if there are more things going on? Are there different ways that we can connect or interpret or bring in the design aspect into the work we do? So here's another multidisciplinary case where we're wanting to treat the excessive gum display and the distemia that's present. And we have to do that, combine that, and see how we can get the best possible result. And we do the same process. So we go from diagnosis. So we look at what the cause is, what the problems are, and what the key elements are that we need to look at to be able to treat this correctly, driven by function and biology. So we know in this case that our key element here is the excessive gum display, the irregular edge shape, and the distemia that are present. So we need to kind of look and see how we can incorporate that and how we can solve that problem before we start. Same process, using the two-dimensional design within the app itself. We take that design, we plan it, and we understand where we want to be. And from there, we're going to then export that design and we're going to share it. The biggest thing here is that we need to do something with the soft tissue. We need to do some way that we can correct the excessive soft tissue, which means we're going to need to do some crown lengthening. Okay, cervical gum lift, whichever way you want to refer to it, we're going to reposition the soft tissue. To be able to reposition the soft tissue accurately, we need to transfer that information. So what do? We take that design, we share it with our laboratory, and they can create a mock-up for us. So now not only can we show the patient two-dimensionally on the app what we want to achieve, but through printing the model, that design, we create an in-house mock-up, and that in-house mock-up is my tick box for my patient to say, yes, I want to continue. This is where I want to end up, and that's the kind of treatment that I want to perform. So we have a checks and balances. We can move from two-dimensional, where the previous case, we only did a 2D and then print it into a 3D. We can do two-dimensional, plan it, print it into a three-dimensional for a mock-up, a test run. With that test run, we're able to get the patient's consent and understand if we're on the right track, where we're going to go, before we even start. As you can see in this guide, that's before the soft tissue was done. We take that and we print a surgical guide, and the printed surgical guide goes to my surgeon, who then performs the crown lengthening procedure. Everything checked and connected, everything controlled throughout the process. So printed surgical, I'm based upon the two-dimensional design, which my laboratory then takes, converts three-dimensionally, and prints a beautiful guide for me. From that, I now have the next phase of my treatment. I can now build and restore the restoration or the smile that I want to create in my new soft tissue profile. How does the surgical work planning workflow work then? So again, I diagnose, I understand what it is that I want to achieve. I create a two-dimensional view for my patient, and I can create a mock-up or a print a mock-up. From that, the 3D design is what my laboratory does, and they create a stent for me, a surgical stent, which my surgeon can then use as guide to create the actual work. Where's my laboratory involved in that? Again, my laboratory starts taking over the realm when it comes to creating the three-dimensional view and goes into the printing and producing the actual result for me. So I've designed the 2D, planned with the patient, and worked until I get a final result post-surgery. Now, where do we go? We start again. It's the same process. Exactly the same things are going to happen. So now you've got the same thing. You've just got the same patient, different soft tissue. Now I redo everything again. Now I start from scratch, keeping in mind the design that I've had for my initial phase. I use that design, the size of the teeth and design of the teeth and the type of shapes of the teeth that I want to achieve. I take that and I create a new two-dimensional design. And that two-dimensional design now forms part of my three-dimensional design. Now I can go and I understand I want to create a stent or guide so that I can have molds for my injection molding process. And this is within the app itself, three-dimensionally manipulating each and every tooth, having the opportunity to choose which tooth shape I want to create, how I want to create that shape, which size teeth I want to use, what is the shape of the teeth. And once I've got the shape and the dimension of the teeth, I can then play around with it in the 3-dimension. Moving it forward, moving it back, changing it as I need to create that exact model or design that I want. For injection molding, that's a special kind of scenario, because in injection molding, we have an end result, but we also have different phases that we want to use when we do the actual treatment in the patient's mouth. What does that look like? Let's start by the next question. Diego, can you ask us, can we load up the next question, just to understand how many people actually, we know that approximately half of the delegates use some kind of two-dimensional design. The big question is, do they use any three-dimensional design at all, at any stage? Let's go see how that goes. Quite a few already using some kind of 3D design in office. But I'd expect that there are quite a few that currently don't do that. Let's go see. So it's pretty much a split.
It's quite a battle.
Yeah, it's like a third. That's impressive, guys.
Wow, that's impressive.
Look at that. Come on, somebody has to break it. Currently, we're standing on, yes, I always do 3D design in office at 32%, trying to learn at 34, and now I don't at 34. So come on, let's go see. Anybody that still needs to answer? Nope. Are we happy with that, Diego?
Yes.
Perfect. So if I look at the polls, it's something I kind of expected. Quite a few of us already work within a 2 dimensions. It kind of sounds weird to say 2 dimensions. We work in 2 dimensions. We plan within 2 dimensions. We work in our office within a 2-dimension realm. And then we use our laboratory to help implement that 2-dimensional design, that mock-up, into a 3-dimensional kind of model where we can work with. So we work hand in hand with our laboratory, and it's great to see that so many of you are actually wanting to learn how we can do that, which is what these kind of things are for. So do we perform 3D? Do you perform 3D smile design? Okay. Within the current software that I'm using within SmileFy, that 3D design that I've now got, where I've planned precisely what I want to achieve, and I've had a discussion with the patient, I can then go and implement those changes and create, using a mesh editor within the app, I'm able to create and finalize the design that I want to have. Once that design is final, this is exactly what I want to achieve for the patient. Then I go and I can export that design. And the great part is within your presets, if you then go and select resin or composite buildups, then the software will automatically create the alternate models. So the software will immediately go and say, okay, you wanting to create the different things, and you'll have a choice. Do I want to create a composite veneer for every alternative, or do you want to create a composite veneer for every tooth? In other words, let me rephrase. Let's just make this completely clear. So we can design the 3D within the editor. We can finalize the design. Once we finalize the design, we can export it. But the beauty of the export, it allows us to export both models. So now we can export that model as a full model or as an alternate model. And because we have that ability, we can literally go and print, and we can export it. We can print it in-house, so we can print it on our own printer, or we can export it. When we export those files, the files get exported containing all the information that's relative. So it will have all the scans, all the tooth dimension, that's everything on it, into a file, and that you can share with your laboratory, and the laboratory can then go ahead to convert that into a printed model, or they can finalize it for you. Okay, so that's the great part about exporting this. If you look at that image right now, you'll see there's also an option to print shells. So you can do that as well. Okay, I've not done that myself. I'm sure that Diego can help us talk through that process a little bit later, but that's also a nice, cool option that we have. Okay, so we can export all the things, and then I team up. This is what is most amazing for me. And hopefully, I think the guys from Diceram, Shane, my technician, I believe he will be in the audience, and hopefully Shane is there. So if Shane's there, Shane, shout out. It's an amazing group of guys that kind of, technicians are the guys that make us look great. Okay, I'm I'm only a dentist. These guys are the real artists, and they're the ones that help us to create the great stuff that we do. And they have a huge amount of information, huge amount of knowledge with it. And that is where I love using the team up feature. So within our software, within our group, what I would do is to take my two-dimensional design, I would create a three-dimensional design. I would team up with my laboratory. That's an option that you have within the app. So my laboratory also has the app on access to the app. So they will then get all the information they need, and then both of us will be working on the same case. So I will do my three-dimensional design, or my two-dimensional design, ask them to create a 3D design, or I will do a 3D design, team up with my laboratory. My laboratory will then go and finalize all the little nuances that needs to be done. They will send me a message, tell me, we're happy. Are you happy? Do you think we can continue? Then I will make any changes, anything that I need to make, or I feel that we need to change, save that, and then give my laboratory the heads up, say, great, you can go ahead, let's produce these models. And that is the great interaction that we have between technician and laboratory within the same platform. So shout out to DiceRam, Shane and his team, and Phil and the guys out there. Thank you for making everything happen and making you look so amazing. Because they take my 3D design and they convert that into a printable model, and they print it for me using an advanced printing system. Okay. I get back the printed model. On the printed model, I create the stent, and now it's simple. Now it's literal injection molding. I'm sure that quite a few of you have already done a number of injection molding cases where we basically use the resin of that negative, that kind of void, and we fill it with the resin that we want to use, and we slowly build each tooth one by one by one. And the great advantage of this, which is why I'm starting to use a lot more of this kind of injection molding technique, is because I've spent so much time creating the design right in the beginning. I've spent so much time creating the plan. I want to now implement it as I created it. And the only way I can do that is by copying. How do I copy? Literally copy with a printed model. And then from there, we can create this beautiful result, guide everything through, and get to a point where we can perform. And we get a nice result for the patient. We've again followed all the criteria. So we're looking at function because of guidance. We're looking at biology and the health of the soft tissue. And we're creating the aesthetic result for the patient that the patient wants. And we've done it in such a way that we've protected without destroying anything that's around. So we got a conservative aesthetic result that will last for the patient and get the patient to be happy. And we followed the plan, just like we planned it right in the beginning, just as we decided what we wanted to change and how we wanted to change it, we did it as planned. So the soft tissue was guided in my first phase of treatment, where we went and did the crown lengthening guided for my surgeon. We then changed the diastema and the irregular edges, and we didn't change the vertical height whatsoever. So we made an aesthetic change for the patient that is functionally driven, which works. So we're taking a patient through a whole process to actually move her across into a happy smile. Okay. And she's very happy. There's a long story behind this entire case, and hopefully I'll have an opportunity to present this case in more detail, because actually this case started 4 years ago already, where she went through orthodontics and orthodontic surgery to get to this point. To get to this point was already 2 years worth of orthodontic treatment and orthodontic surgery. Don't have enough time to go through all of that, but you can imagine how much change had happened to that patient and how happy she is to finally get to the results she wanted after 3 to 4 years of treatment. Okay. Again, all of it based within resin, but following the design, following the plan that we had and why we want to achieve it. What is the process for injection molding and what is the workflow that I use for the injection molding? I will go from the 2D into a 3D design, which I can manipulate on the software itself. Within the mesh editor, create and make the minor changes that I want to make and export that. That exported file will allow me to create 2 files, which is the full file and the knit1 file. And then I just need to basically copy that design and just follow it. And my laboratory becomes a very important part of that process through the TeamUp app. Through TeamUp, I'm able to connect with my laboratory in the 3D, within the mesh, and in exporting in the file. And when they're exporting that file, they're printing it through the printer, we can then have everything that I need. Okay. And that is a kind of overview of how we'll then go in an injection molding type of case and a resin-driven restorative case. Similar to the first case, if we were to go back, similar to the first case, where we used the design 2D into a 3D, into an export, print, and perform. We used injection molding in this case. In the previous case, everything was hand-built with a stent guided by my 2-dimensional design. Okay. But what about more complex cases? What about if we have a seriously complex case? Again, severe wear in a multidisciplinary scenario. So here you can hardly see any teeth. Grumpy old man. Don't tell him I said that. Man is a grumpy old man. Okay. So how are we going to get a smile for him? And how are we going to create all of that kind of stuff for him? Again, simple. It starts with the same basic starting point. You have to diagnose. Understand what it is that we want to create. We have to see, first of all, there's excessive soft tissue. Why? Because of the wear that's taken place. Because the wear has taken place, the teeth have slowly over-erupted to try and keep contact. That's a natural over-eruption. So a kind of, adaptation that happens within the mouth when wear is present. Okay, so we have generalized wear with short stubby teeth with little tooth show, very important, and we have over-eruption with a lot of soft tissue. So in this case, if we go look at it, because we have no tooth show, the incisal position is not correct. So we need to change the incisal position. The over-eruptions cause the gum overgrowth. So we need to take some gum away. So this is a combination case where the previous case, the incisal tip was at the correct point. Only the soft tissue needed to change. Now we have a soft tissue change and a length discrepancy or an incisal tip position that isn't correct. To treat this kind of case is a lot more complex. We need to restore what has been lost, but not only in the front. We have to create a functional biological environment, which means we have to restore everything that is lost. How are we going to do that? By increasing the vertical dimension. So we need to increase everything. Okay. But even this complex kind of scenario still starts with exactly the same point. It starts with a 2-dimensional idea of where we want to end. The same steps. I couldn't even do a 2D design for him with just a normal smile because you couldn't see any teeth. So all my 2D design was done within a retracted smile view. And I used the interpupillary line to kind of guide for me where the horizontal is, and then get a general idea of the design that we need to achieve. This was done earlier in the year, January, February kind of way. And at that point, we didn't have the ability to, I couldn't import the scans, the 3-dimensional scan into my software. Now what would happen is I can actually import the 3D scan into my software, and then I can work on the 3D scan in the 2-dimensional view. I'll show you what that looks like just now. Okay. But the point is that we worked 2-dimensionally. From 2-dimensionally, I shared that information to my laboratory, and my laboratory then finalized the design for me on their in their practice, in their laboratory, and they created the mock-up, and I can see the mock-up design. Massive change. You actually see teeth, which is amazing. Okay. But now we know there are 2 steps that need to happen. The first is we need to remove the excess soft tissue, and then we can go into restorative realm. Okay. And then you've had that already. We've done that before. We've done that in the previous case where we've taken that laboratory, the mock-up, the 2D into a 3D, and we created a stent, which is going to help my surgeon. And that's exactly what we do. So we give that information to my surgeon. My surgeon takes that stent and it creates the soft tissue that we need. And then you can see this is 4 or 5 months post-surgery, the soft tissue having restored or recovered quite a lot. And it's matured enough so that I can work in that realm. Yes, I know he needs to go brush his teeth better. And I should have taken the photographs after he went to the hygienist. But that's one of those things, okay? Patients need to look after the things. I can promise you he's doing it now because he's invested and he's proud and he wants to be there. So he's looking after his teeth now, okay? So now we can see the after surgery view where we've got the base and the structure that we need to have. From 2D, we go into a 3D realm. I retake all the photographs, start from scratch again, using the information that I've had or got from my initial diagnosis. I redo my smile design and I check that I'm still on track. Has my surgeon done what I need them to do? Has he created what I want him to create? And can I work with within that realm? Creating a 3-dimensional view, playing 3-dimensionally, and within the 3-dimensional view, I then go and create everything I have. And then I can finalize my 3D. Going through the 3D design into my mesh editor. My mesh editor allows me to manipulate and change a few things. And this is absolutely not possible. I want to, if Carmina is on, I want to give a shout out for Carmina from SmileFy. She's been helping me tirelessly trying to learn how the soft tissue works and how the software works. And she's done wonders. An amazing woman. And I'm so glad that within SmileFy themselves, they're able to give us the support that we need to be able to design these kind of things. And through her work and through the help of the guys, I've been able to then start building these 3D designs within the practice. Okay. Taking that, sharing that with my team up, with my laboratory, who's still the most important people, take my laboratory in a complex case like this, because now I not only have a model for injection molding, it's not just 2 models or a mock-up model. Now there are multiple models that are involved. Through using the Connect with my laboratory, I'm able to print the upper and lower models. And to such an extent, I'm even able to print provisionals, which is amazing where we are at the moment when it comes to materials that we have. So we can work in a 2-dimensional realm. We can design 3-dimensionally, but in the end of the day, we actually have to produce in an analog realm again. And how we can do that is through using our printing skills and the printing resins to be able to do that. And the resins nowadays are just incredible in not only models we can print, we can actually start printing restorations. I mentioned before that you have the ability to print shells. And what we've done in this case is actually use the designs to print provisional restorations for this case. So in other words, we're able to restore everything that we want to do in resin, and we're going to use our provisionals to rebuild or raise the occlusion, change the vertical dimension in provisionals, but not doing it freehand, doing it guided by the printed models from Accurata. And how do they do that? Well, let's go ask you the next question before you guys fall asleep. Let's ask you the next question. Yeah, if you're there, question 3. If you've created a 3-dimensional design and you've created everything you already want, you've got this restoration, how would you manage that? How would you now take that information to share it across the different platforms? Would you do it yourself? In other words, do you have a printer at your office where you'll be able to print your 3D designs? Or are you using a laboratory to be able to do that for you? Okay. Quite a few are already printing in-house, but as expected, quite a number of you don't have that ability just yet. Okay, so you're still using a laboratory, which is amazing. Okay. Awesome. Thank you for that. So quite a few are already printing your in-house models, okay, which is amazing because you can now take your 3D design into your mock-up, into your injection molding, and if you're lucky enough, you can actually print your temporaries as well, which is amazing. Okay. How does that actually work? As you can imagine, well, I currently don't have my own printer, so I don't print directly myself. I use my laboratory I work hand in hand with my laboratory to be able to achieve that. And in this case, the guys from the mill have actually assisted us in printing the models in this complex case. And they were actually able to create, you can see how they do the layout and the setup. This is something that's absolutely amazing. I still find this so fascinating. I'm definitely investing. I'm definitely buying a printer. I just need to tell my partner that. Buying a printer next. But then what we're able to do is through the milling platform, set it up, mill up temporaries, okay, which we've shared. My laboratory is designed and finalized, set it up into the printer model itself, print those restorations, and then from there, we can also then use, for instance, this case was done on the sole printer from Accurata. And within that resin base, just reprint that beautiful restorations. Okay, this is the models being printed within the realm, and it's incredible. And Jacques is online, so Jacques will be able to answer some questions for you regarding how the printing side of it works and how the connection between your 3D design and the printing itself is going to physically work, and what you can do within your own surgeries if you want to get involved into actual printing your own kind of stuff. The guys from 4D Digital is happy to help you with these kind of printers and what it is that you can achieve using the Sole Accurator. Okay. Once it's printed, it goes through a cleaning phase where it goes in the cleaning. And then that process just allows you to actually create more beautiful, precise restorations, which I'm then able to use chairside. So all that connection, all that printing happens, and I then take that information, print it, get it ready, get it ready to rock and roll. I receive this, or if I had it in my practice, which is going to be next month, then I will take that and then implement it. Okay. So currently the guys would send me a beautiful box. with all the information, all the toys and all the tricks that I want. They kind of log it in there, and then I take it from there. So there you can see the temporaries that have been created and how we create those temporaries. And the temporaries and all of that then arrive at my surgery. In my surgery, I now have access to all of this information. I have got all the printed models, I've got all the printed temporaries, and I can slowly start implementing these designs step by step by step. Starting with the upper, so in this case, I started with the upper direct combination of injection molding and facial layering. Why did I do that? And this is just something that I've kind of figured out, and a lot of you that do injection molding would understand. Very difficult to close diastemas using injection molding. But I also want to treat, so a lot of that's going to happen by layering, but I also want to treat the excessive wear palatally, and I can't do that predictably without using the design. So I'm going to use best of both worlds. And what I currently would do is I would build the palatal and incisal, the shape of the tooth, using the injection molding. I would then do a cutback and then layer and chain and close the diastemas. I would close freehand using all the different tricks and tools that we've learned along the way. I know there are a couple of guys out here that are working on solutions, and maybe they can help us with some solutions. I think a cool trick would be if we, is Chris Chart here? I wonder if Chris is on here. There's a great guy up in Joburg that does amazing stuff using injection molding. He does a lot of digital work, Chris, and we were chatting this weekend about how we can combine different layering. So can we actually do 4 prints? So in other words, can we print all the palatals in 2 and then do the buccal or facial in the second print? So now you have the palatal built, and we've got that guide, finish that, and then use a new stent. You place the stent over an injection mold, the facial aspect, to solve the entire solution, which I think is something that I'm very keen to try out and try and work with. So if you kind of watch the space and you kind of see what we're up to, then maybe we'll be able to share that with you going forward. In this case, however, we did palatal shell injection molding, cut back and layered to get the correct shape. The lower anterior was done just in injection molding, straightforward. And the lower posterior, because we're increasing vertical dimension, we want to do that in ceramic because that's a stronger solution we have. So we're going to use tabletop ceramics with a minimal preparation design. So I've just created some kind of smooth, soft finishing lines, scan that, send that to my laboratory, and they then create the final ceramics to go with that. Okay, so we're combining resin in the anterior and ceramics in the posterior to give us the strength and longevity. And that's our end result. So again, building layering, getting the correct length to width ratio, closing diastemas, and then building or changing vertical dimension by working in the lowers, increasing the length of the lower anterior with injection molding, and building the functional load in the posterior with ceramics. Okay, creating the entire solution, taking our grumpy old man, don't tell him I say he's grumpy, to a grumpy old man through a 2-dimensional, 3-dimensional soft tissue augmentation changing process, all planned digitally into a more of a happy, smiley guy. Okay, at least he has teeth now, which is great to see. So he's happier. And we followed a predictable result, planning along the way. Okay, so what did those workflows look like? What did the workflow look like within his case? Starting with the soft tissue changes and everything, we went into post-soft tissue redesign, 2D, 3D, exporting that to my laboratory because my laboratory has the ability to take that 3D design and to manipulate both the upper and lower jaw together, printing my models, producing everything I want, and then creating the ceramics. Okay. So is there a better way that we can do it currently? I think there's definitely a way. And as you can see from the poll that we had, quite a number of you already do that. The question is, can we connect our 2D and our 3D design all the way through? Yes, it is possible if we use the correct software and we use the correct tools. So within the SmileFy software, we can create the 3D design for simpler cases, for mock-ups, and creating your injection molding cases, and then printing those models either in-house or sending it to your laboratory to work with them to create that. And then from that design, we can go, or we can actually create the 3D design, allow our laboratory to use that within the big scheme of things, pulling that into different areas so that we can create and recreate the entire mouth and then go through. Okay. So for me, that workflow is kind of the way I'm looking at working with every single case that I'm looking at. So 2D into a 3D design, using my laboratory through TeamUp to help me to identify and help me to design and get everything that I need, printing the designs either in the laboratory or in my own office, and then using that for my predictable way of performing, getting the results that I want. Okay. Is there a better way? Yes, there is. Are there still limitations? Yes. Okay. With that, spot on, 1 hour. I think that's amazing. I'm happy to answer any questions. If you want to drop me a message or send me a message directly, please feel free to do so. You can get hold of me on any of the social tags on Instagram and Facebook. I'm always happy to help. Otherwise, try and get a hold of me on email or just message me directly on this post. Great shout out to the guys at SmileFy, 40 Digital Accurator, to make this possible, the work that you guys have done, and UML as well. And obviously my laboratory, Shane, you guys at DiceRam, you're amazing. You're the guys that make everything happen and make me look good. So I thank you for that. If there are any questions, please, I know Diego's here to help us answer any clinical question, any question relating to the app itself. Jacques is here to help us with any of the printing problems or anything that we need. We want to look at how we can implement the printing within our own practices. And then obviously I'm here to help answer any questions that you might have regarding any of the clinical aspects that we've seen. Okay. Do you want me to stop sharing the screen, or do you want to keep the screen up and then we can just answer any questions as we go?
Yeah, well, first I want to thank you for your amazing presentation. We are getting a lot of comments here saying fantastic presentation, great presentation, Dr. John. Just so you know, Dr. Chris is here.
Hey, Chris, big man.
And wonderful. I think the entire presentation was very easy to follow. And thank you for showing, our daily workflow, which we know, like in one day, we see very simple cases all the way to very complex cases. And you were able to develop all this entire workflow to all of us. All of our attendees stayed here from the beginning to the end. So as a way of saying thank you, I'm just going to share here my screen very quickly, Dr. Jean. Just a way of saying thank you for all of you that
stop sharing, yeah.
For all of you that stayed here. We as a SmileFy company want to say thank to you guys, and also for those who are not yet a SmileFy member, we want to give you for the next 48 hours these premium plan, this professional plan, sorry, which includes all the 2D aspects of it, unlimited, all the 3D aspects of it, the exporting the team up. But not only that, we also want to give you an online Smile Designer certification course. This online Smile certification course will give you all the tools to teach you how to take the proper picture, how to upload the files, how to communicate better with your patients through the Smile simulations, and how to begin your treatment plans using the 3D design on SmileFy. The link is now available in your chat, and Dr. Daniela is here to answer any questions that you may have. Okay, this offer is available worldwide, and it's only available for the 48 hours, as we want to make sure that we can give the best source and the best support to all of our new members. To those who are currently in South Africa, as Dr. Jean is in South Africa, and for us, such a pleasure to do this webinar, especially for this region. We have Jackie, he is here, and he is here to give you all the information, all the sources from the Accurata 3D printer, or for any other type of 3D workflow that you want to have in your practice and want to follow the steps, just like Dr. just showed here in our presentation today. For further information, you can always contact info@smilefy.com or take a screenshot here of our phone number to get more information about how to sign up, how to become a SmileFy member.
Awesome.
All right. So I want to thank all of you guys once again for staying here with us. Again, Dr. Jean, it's such a pleasure to have you in our webinar here today, and it was truly a blast to see your workflow. It really matches. That's the fun part, because it really matches with the workflow that all of our SmileFy users also are performing now. Dentistry now is, such a fantastic, profession, because now we can implement the digital aspect of it into our analog world. So I want to thank you once again, and I want to thank the South Africa Academy as well.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Diego. Thank you, guys. It's always a pleasure to be here. Hopefully I was able to help a little bit and answer some of the questions. It's always, for me, it's interesting to see how we grow and how we change things and how we start developing and working as technology changes. But in essence, the core still stays the same. Hey? In the end of the day, we still need to work within the mouse, within a patient and with a patient. These are all the tools that we need to be able to do that. The patient is in the end the one that wins, and we need to do it for them. And using these great tools with the Smile simulators, with all these tools, we're able to bring that journey for the patient so much closer. So it's something that they are able to share with us, and we can see how excited they get to be able to do that with us. So that's the amazing part. And obviously connecting 3D and analog is only possible if you can print high quality. So that helps. Again, any questions, I'm happy to help you. Drop me a message if ever you want. Most of you guys know how to get hold of me here in South Africa. I'm here. And then I look forward to chatting with you guys soon again.
All right, wonderful. All right, and so we are going to close the camera here and the microphone. But our team will be available here in the chat for the next couple of minutes. Dr. Jean, if you desire to stay here to talk to our guests, you're more than welcome. If not,
happy to do so.
I want to thank you for being with us, and we will see you next time. All right, so I have a question here. Can you explain the reason for the extra printed palatal and buccal models for injection molding?
Did I open a can of worms now? So let me try and explain. And I think if Chris is still on, raise your hand, big man. We were chatting this weekend about how we can possibly solve the problem of layering, first of all, using injection molding, first thing. And secondly, can we close the diastemas using injection molding? So in the last case, so in the first case, it was freehand. Second case, it was purely injection molding. In the third case, we had a lot of palatal wear. So we want to recreate the palatal anatomy, okay? But we also want to recreate the anterior facial anatomy. The problem we have when closing diastemas and working in that realm, that bigger scenario like that, is that we can't control both all at the same time. It becomes really messy. Clinically, it becomes messy. So one way to do that is if you create two models, one way is the design itself, but it is a design with palatal framework only. We print that model. So when you do that injection molding, you'll have all the palatal scaffold, everything printed, but you won't have the facial printed yet. In your second printed models, you now use the same thing, but now you fill in the facial. So when you do your injection molding for the second time, your palatal scaffold is already in place. Now you inject the facial scaffold and the two join. So you've done your injection molding in two layers, palatal and facial or buccal. And that's kind of the thought process. Can it be done? I'm sure it can be done. If you hang around for a few months, I'm definitely going to do a few cases doing that. And then we'll kind of come up with a solution, try and share with you how we kind of brainstormed it and how we overcame some of the shortcomings, some of the problems we face. I hope that answers the question. Does it make sense?
Yeah, well, that's amazing. We do, in SmileFy, we have a course called the Smile Designer Certification course focused on composite veneers. And we teach exactly what you just said. For cases, we have a case actually in the course, which a patient has a old class 4 restoration. I had to rebuild. So I started by creating a palatal guide using the model from SmileFy. So first I created the first layer from the palatal area, and then I created the built with preheated composite on the buccal surface. So I created that multi-layering technique, giving, proper strength and also the right translucency for it, using that buccal anatomy that we designed on SmileFy. So exactly the same mindset.
Yeah. So I knew, if you think of something, somebody else has already thought about it and implemented it. So there we go. Sorry, Chris, we're going to just have to go and do a SmileFy course in the US. Okay, so Chris and I will fly to the US and come and join you for a SmileFy course, and then we can brainstorm together about how we're gonna solve all the small nuances.
You're more than welcome to come.
Okay, thanks. Then. Any other questions, guys? All good.
All right. So thank you, Dr. Jean. Once again, and thank you everybody for staying here. We're going to end this meeting now. But again, if you have any further questions, don't forget to connect with us. We'll be more than happy to help you. Okay. All right. So you guys have a wonderful day and a wonderful evening for those who are already in the nighttime.